Hi guys, Bearded Rogue here, and I don't have a lot of time. It's pretty late right now, and I need to get to sleep for work, but I wanted to make sure that I have videos recorded for everything. I don't want to miss a day 3 years in. So I wanted to talk about con come down, or con down, or however you want to phrase it. The lowering of your elevated mood after you have left a con, and how to deal with that. For me, as an extrovert, cons are the greatest thing that could possibly exist. Just one moment at Gen Con at the Nerd Night event where I was in a room with 50 people that I knew who were all amazing people, who were game designers and media content creators and just awesome people in general. I eat that stuff up. Like, I live for those moments. That's the greatest thing that I could ever have happen to me, and the separation of being apart from everybody in between cons is something that's very real. I've actually found that cons that I get sick afterwards, like if I get con crud, that actually makes it a little bit easier to deal with, as weird as that is, simply because I'm dealing with the illness and not having to deal with the lowering of my mood, the emotional high wearing off as much, because I'm dealing with being sick. But I haven't had con crud in a while. I didn't get con crud BGG Con last year. I didn't get it after Origins. I didn't get it after this Gen Con. So I've managed to avoid con crud for the last 3 major conventions that I've gone to. Fingers crossed that this BGG Con makes a full year that I've managed to avoid it. Never gotten con crud in an unpub, so that's just one of those things. But so it's been almost a year, not quite, 9 months or so. Like, there is a very real, like, letdown after a convention. I'm starting to get better at dealing with it. I've started to find some techniques that work for me, other than getting sick. I don't recommend getting sick. But I've started finding some techniques that work for me to kind of ease back into normal life. The first thing that really works for me is I make sure that I take the day after the convention off. So if the convention runs through Sunday night, I take Monday off. I know this isn't feasible for everybody, but going right from Sunday convention into bedtime into Monday morning work is really harsh. It's like jumping into the cold swimming pool levels of harsh. So that's the first thing that I do, is I try to avoid working the day after a convention. If I can get that Monday off, if at all possible, I make that happen. Second is that I try to, when I get back from the con, do things that keep that alive for me over a longer period of time. Examples of that: post on Twitter thanking people for making the con great for me, highlighting particular things at the con, whether it was games that I played, or prototypes I tested, or people that I saw, or whatever. Recording content. Gen Con happens to fall during August, so it always follows into my Vlogust. There's always several videos about Gen Con in Vlogust because of that reason. And it's a really convenient way to say my piece about everything, and kind of like bring it all to a close, like formally close it. It's not the harsh hot cut from con life to real life. So that's one of the reasons why I do that. I do videos that report on what I bought, or what I played, or who I saw, or what I liked, or the con itself, or just all of that sort of stuff. It doesn't have to be like snapshot of life, you know, this is me traveling home, walking through the airport stuff. It also doesn't have to be like 100% of everything that you did. Don't feel obligated to record the entirety of your history into it. Just do something that allows you to slowly drift away from the con mentality, while at the same time gives you an opportunity to appreciate all the other wonderful people who were there, all of the things that made the con great. You can vent about anything that wasn't good, and usually the community is really, really supportive about stuff like that. It can make a difference for other people. If you had a bad experience and you actually put it out there into the world, people like to know that. If they're in charge of conventions, they typically like to know that somebody had a bad experience, or companies like to know if someone had a bad experience with like a bad demo or a bad situation at a booth, or if some marketing practice that they did, like surprise game announcements, or you know, re-releasing things after people have purchased them, all the things that companies can do that can upset people. Whether they want to hear it in harsh tones or not, companies appreciate knowing if they've upset their customers in any way, shape, or form. It helps them to do better in the future. They also like hearing about what they did well, and highlighting what companies did well, or if you had a particular demo that went really well and you really liked the person who did it, let the company know that. They may try to bring that person back for future conventions. Companies are always needing additional help. Most of the companies in this industry aren't big enough to have like a staff that can be a permanent convention staff that can be paid, you know, 365 days a year. A lot of their convention staff are either people who already have other jobs, are there to scout additional games or manage relationships with distributors or manufacturers. They already have other things that they're doing at the con. So almost everybody relies on contractors or volunteers to fill out their booth staff. Letting them know that somebody did a particularly good job or somebody did a particularly bad job helps them fill that staff out for the next convention, you know, or makes other companies aware that of particular people who are really good at what they're doing, or people who you should stay away from. It's just helpful for everybody. Kind of helps the whole group. But I find that having conversations like that, talking about what was good, what was bad, talking about what I got, talking about what I did, highlighting particular individuals, really helps me long term with the sensation of dropping back into the real world. It eases that cold water drop into something more manageable. You know, each video or each tweet is me lowering my toe in and getting used to the temperature, and then lowering in a little bit more and getting used to the temperature. It makes it much, much easier than just trying to jump right back into life. One of the other things that helps, play the games that you purchased. I know everybody has these big backlogs of games that they haven't played, or that they haven't even unshrink wrapped or punched. I get it. As somebody who's in the hobby and knows how often new games are released, I really genuinely get having a backlog of games that you haven't played. But one of the best things that you can do after a convention is actually play the games that you purchased. You may not get to them all, but get to some of them. It enhances the experience for me, especially if it's a game that I like. It enhances the experience for me because it lets me feel more value out of what I did with my time and my money. You know, after a convention's usually a little bit tight, depending on where it falls in the pay period. So, you know, there's the budget that you have for the convention, there's the financial realities of the convention, and then there's, you know, making it through your everyday bills and everything. But playing those games, getting some plays out of them, getting that under your belt, can enhance the amount of value that you feel you got out of your experience. It's the same kind of thing if you go somewhere for vacation and you get something fancy, like one of my cousins went to Abu Dhabi and came back with dates from there, which were magical, like unbelievably good, but they were able to share that with the family, and it was an experience that allowed them to value that time that they spent there even more, even though they weren't at that place anymore. Same kind of thing here. If you like getting gifts for people, getting gifts for someone at a convention, and then giving it to them and sharing that with them is another way that you can kind of ease that come down. While I was really stressed out about making sure that I picked up the games that people asked me to pick up and bring back, I was overjoyed to be able to give those games to the people who asked, and that makes a huge difference for them. Like, they were part of my con even if they weren't there, and I get to remember that and feel that gratitude that I, you know, did something at my con that now is helping them, and it's, again, more easing back into it. If you're a designer, one of the things you can do is decompress as far as your designs go. I'm not saying, like, abandon them and give them up. Like, do an after action session. Like, figure out what it is about your designs that needs to be next. Like, do you have emails to send to publishers thanking them for their time and for their consideration and for, you know, taking prototypes, that sort of thing? Do you have things that you need to change on your designs from your playtesting, if any, that you got during the event? You know, do you need to update your files? Do you need to, you know, change some wordings? Do you need to update the rulebook? Do you need to completely redo the game? Like, sit down and evaluate what all there is to do. I find that staying in action around it really helps me as far as design goes, and conventions are a very good way to spark a whole bunch of creativity all at once. You know, you could be like me and design a game on the way to the convention, play test it 4 times, and have it totally refine itself into something that plays pretty damn well from something that you hand drew on note cards like the night before. There's all sorts of things that you can do as a designer to decompress that way. Some people really like to take a step back from everything, like take a week to not think about their designs. You know, they've already got their notes, hopefully. They've already got all the info that they had from the convention. Take a week, you know, decompress, and then come back to it in a week with fresh eyes to look at the notes and see, you know, where that takes them. You know, everybody's process is a little bit different. I have to do a little bit every day, or I start not doing anything. So if it's, you know, just looking at what my feedback was, or sending some emails, or, you know, revising some cards, some of it's not readily apparent to other people. Like, it may not be things that anybody sees on the outside, but it's things that I do to keep myself tied into it. Having conversations with playtesters who played it at the convention is something else you can do. If you need a little bit more data or a little bit more detail, sometimes people are amenable to that, particularly other designers are usually pretty good about, hey, you remember when we played this and this thing happened? What do you think would happen if I did this instead? I love being able to have those kind of after-action conversations, like 2 days later, 3 days later, with a designer, and see what they think about your idea of fixing the issues that were encountered. It's also a good way to make sure that you pinpoint what the issues were, because as has been discussed in other medium, both in my podcast and in other videos, what somebody says is the problem may not be the actual problem. It may just be the symptom that hints at the problem. And so sometimes what you choose to address may address their issue without addressing it directly, and it can be cool to get confirmation of that when you talk to someone later on. But yeah, there's all sorts of things that you can do. You know, stay in communication with the community. If you're like me and you're an extrovert, that's a big thing. Like, making sure I keep talking to the people that I hung out with at the con, thanking them, liking their posts and all of their decompression stuff, just staying involved. If you're an introvert, I unfortunately can't give you that much advice. Do whatever it is you need to do to recharge your batteries. If that's, you know, take a week off and retreat into your hole after being around that many people at one time, please do that. You know, we want you guys healthy too, so that when you do make the forays out into the major conventions, you can actually have a good time and actually return to your daily life without any drama on top of that. You know, I want to see you guys at the next convention, so I want to make sure that your decompression from the last convention actually took place and you actually got a chance to recover. But yeah, I mean, that's what I can think of, you know, as far as what I do to deal with it. I'm getting better at it. I'm experiencing less of the drop in mood and the upset that used to accompany attending conventions. It used to be I would go to a convention and then it wasn't until a week later that I was even myself. That's not the case anymore. I, you know, take that one Monday to decompress, do whatever, and then, you know, go back into my work day and ease in using content creation and playing games and working on designs to, you know, bring myself back into my everyday routine. And it's working pretty well now. I'm really enjoying this new way of transitioning, rather than just airdropping from con back into the real world, my daily life, which is a very harsh change of environment. Anyway, that's all I really wanted to say. You know, if you have any other suggestions for how you deal with the after-con blues, or if you are an introvert who has some suggestions that you can offer introverts, that would be wonderful, because I don't have a lot of stuff that I can say beyond do what you need to do. Yeah, feel free to comment, you know, on the video, comment on the Twitter link where you invariably saw the link to this video, and thank you guys for listening, and thank you guys for being so amazing at a convention that I have so much stuff that I can talk about, because it makes the transition back into daily life much, much easier for me. So, Bearded Rogue, out.